During the New Year's Eve dinner, my son's new wife stepped out to take a work call. My grandson followed her and then came running back, his face pale and trembling. "Grandma, we have to get out of here right now. I heard my stepmother talking about you." 15 minutes later. The police stormed into the house. My name is Susan Miller, but everyone calls me Sue. I'm 68 years old, and I thought I had seen everything in this life. I was wrong. That New Year's Eve, while I was arranging the last of the champagne flutes on the dining room table, I never imagined that my entire world was about to explode. The aroma of freshly baked turkey filled my house, that colonial Victorian home in the old part of town that my grandfather built in 1952, with its high ceilings and walls that held 3 generations of laughter and secrets. It was 11:30 at night. The table shimmered with my hand-embroidered ivory tablecloth, the one I only took out for the most special occasions. There were 23 guests, family, neighbors, and a few close friends. Among them was her Karen, my son Ryan's new wife, that woman who in just 6 months had managed to do what no one else could: divide my family like someone slicing a loaf of bread. I was serving the fruit punch when I saw her walking away toward the hallway, her cell phone pressed to her ear, with that smile I had already learned to decipher. A smile that never reached her eyes. "Sorry, Mom, it is work." "You know how it is during the busy season," she said to me as she passed, touching my shoulder with a familiarity that made my stomach turn. No one else seemed to notice. Everyone was laughing, drinking, celebrating the arrival of the new year, as if nothing was wrong. But I did notice something else. My grandson, Matt, barely 13 years old, followed her with his gaze. And then in silence, he stood up from the table. If this story is grabbing your attention, subscribe to the channel to continue discovering real stories that will make you reflect on family, respect, and dignity. 3-4 minutes passed. I was trying to concentrate on Mr. Jacobs' conversation about the rising price of gas, but my mind was elsewhere. Where was Matt? Why was Karen taking so long? Then I saw him. Matt appeared in the doorframe of the dining room. His face, usually so full of life, was white as a sheet. His hands were trembling. His eyes were wide open as if he had seen a ghost, or something worse. He walked straight toward me, dodging the guests, almost tripping over his uncle's chair. He crouched down beside me, and when he whispered in my ear, his broken voice went through me like a knife. "Grandma, we have to go. Now." I heard everything. Her. "She talked about you, about the house. She said that in 15 minutes the police would come for you." The world stopped. The noise of the party turned into a distant buzz. I felt my heart stop beating for a full second. The spoon I was holding fell onto the plate with a metallic clatter that no one else seemed to hear. "What did you say?" I managed to articulate, though my voice sounded like someone else's. "The police, Grandma." "They are coming for you," Karen said on the phone. "Everything is almost ready." "The police. In 15 minutes we will have her out of here." "Grandma, what did you do? Why are the police looking for you?" Matt's question hit me with devastating force. What had I done? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that was precisely the problem. I had done nothing while that woman wove her web around my life, around my family, around everything I loved. I looked toward the hallway. Karen had just returned, putting her phone into the pocket of her wine-colored dress. She looked directly at me and smiled, a victorious smile, a smile that said, "I won." In that instant, with 15 minutes on the clock and 20-something witnesses unaware of what was about to happen, I had to make the most important decision of my life: run from my own house on New Year's Eve like a criminal, or stay and face whatever this woman had planned against me. I looked at my grandson. His eyes were begging us to flee. I looked at my house, every corner I knew by heart. I looked at Ryan, my son, sitting next to Karen, oblivious to everything, laughing at some joke someone had just told. 15 minutes. The clock in the living room showed 11:35 at night. At 11:50, my life would change forever. only not in the way Karen expected, because what she did not know, what nobody knew at that moment, is that during the last 3 months, while everyone thought I was just a foolish and confused old woman, I had been preparing my own play, a play that required patient silence and the perfect moment, and that moment had just arrived. To understand how I got to that night of horror, I have to go back 6 months, to that Thursday in June when everything seemed normal, when I still believed I knew my son. It was a hot afternoon, one of those days in the city that make you seek the shade of the ash tree in the patio. I was in my sewing room, a room full of light at the back of the house, finishing a Sweet 16 dress for Mr. Jacob's granddaughter. The fan was spinning lazily above my head, barely moving the heavy air. I had been living alone for 8 years. 8 years since my Ernest passed away, leaving me this huge house and an emptiness that some days still made it hard to breathe. But I had learned to live with that emptiness, to fill it with my sewing, my patio plants, Matt's visits every weekend, and the afternoons playing bridge with Linda and the neighbors. My house was worth approximately $500,000, according to what an appraiser had told me the previous year. It was a historic property right in the center of town with 3 spacious bedrooms, a central patio with a stone fountain, original wooden beam ceilings, and those high windows that made every room look like a chapel. My grandfather built it brick by brick. My father grew up here. I was born in the room that was now my workshop. Ernest and I raised Ryan within these walls. This house was more than stone and mortar. It was my complete history. The doorbell rang at 6:30 in the evening. I was not expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there was Ryan, my only son, with his white work shirt wrinkled and that nervous smile he used when he had something important to say. And next to him, her, Karen. The first thing I thought was, she is so young. 28 years old, I would find out later. 14 years younger than Ryan. She was wearing spotless white pants and a peach-colored blouse that surely cost more than my sewing machine. Her brown hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders, discreet but professional makeup, nude-colored nails freshly done, a designer bag, one of those you recognize from 10 feet away. Mom, Ryan said, and in his voice there was something I had not heard in years. Pure emotion. This is Karen. It is Mom. She is the love of my life. The love of his life. Ryan had had 3 serious girlfriends before. He had never used those words with any of them. Karen extended her hand, soft smelling of lavender perfume, and smiled at me with a warmth that seemed genuine. Mrs. Miller, what an honor to finally meet you. Ryan has told me so much about you. He says you make the best pot roast in the city. The right phrase, the right tone, the right smile. Too right. I made them coffee while they settled in the living room. I observed how Karen looked at every detail. The pendulum clock that had belonged to my grandmother, the photographs on the mantel, the mahogany bookshelf, the Persian rug that Ernest brought back from a trip. Her eyes roamed over everything with an attention that made me uncomfortable, although at that moment I did not know why. "What a beautiful house," she said, accepting the cup. "These historic buildings are architectural jewels. What is the square footage?" A strange question for a first visit. 3,000 square feet, I replied without giving her more information. It has been in the family since 1952. Incredible, she murmured, and I saw how her eyes made a quick calculation. Ryan told me that you are a widow. It must be difficult to maintain a property like this alone. There it was again, that concern that sounded rehearsed. "I manage well," I said, keeping my voice neutral. During the next 2 hours, Karen was perfect. She praised the coffee. She asked about my health with apparent interest. She laughed at Ryan's stories. When I showed her some of my sewing, she pretended to be genuinely impressed. She offered to help me wash the cups. She called me Mom with affection. But something did not add up, something in the way she touched Ryan's arm when she spoke as if she were marking territory. Something about how she deflected the conversation every time I tried to ask her about her family, her work, her past. "Oh, Mom, today is a day for celebration. There will be time for those chats," she would say, with a charming little laugh. And then I noticed the detail that froze my blood. While Ryan was talking about an architectural project, Karen took out her cell phone. I thought she was checking messages, but I saw her out of the corner of my eye photographing the living room, fast, sneaky, like someone who does not want to be noticed. She put the phone away before Ryan realized. 3 weeks later, Ryan arrived with news. They were getting married. They had gone to the courthouse. Express marriage, no ceremony, no party. Mom, when you know she is the one, why wait? Karen had moved into his apartment. They started visiting me together every weekend, her always with gifts, flowers, pastries from that expensive bakery downtown, skin creams, always with questions about the land I had by the lake that my father left me, about my bank accounts, about if I had a will. It is just that I worry about you, Mom. At our age, we have to have everything in order. Our age. I was 68, she was 28. One afternoon, while I was making lemonade in the kitchen, I heard her talking on the phone in the patio. She was saying something about appraisal and documents and a trusted lawyer. When I returned with the drinks, she had already hung up and was smiling at me as if nothing happened. My mother's wedding ring disappeared from my jewelry box in August. A white gold ring with 3 emeralds that was worth about $6,000, but its sentimental value was incalculable. I kept it in a dark green velvet box on my dresser. When I looked for it to wear to a wedding, it was not there. Karen found it 3 days later. Mom, look what was behind the flower pot in the living room. How did it get there? She returned it to me with a hero's smile, but the ring did not shine the same anymore. She had taken it to get cleaned, she said. Only when I checked it with a magnifying glass, I noticed that the emeralds were smaller. Someone had switched the original stones. I told Ryan. His response broke my heart. Mom, you are getting older. Surely you confused it. Karen would never do something like that. She adores you. That night, alone in my room, I held the ring under the lamp and understood something terrible. My own son did not believe me anymore. And this was just beginning. September arrived with the first rains, and with them the changes began. Small at first, so subtle that if I had said them out loud, I would have sounded like a paranoid old woman. But I felt it. Like when a spider web brushes your face in the dark. You do not see it, but you know it is there. Karen started coming to my house with folders and decoration magazines. Mom, look how beautiful this laminate flooring would look instead of those old tiles, she would say, pointing to photos of modern, cold, soulless interiors. And this minimalist furniture would make the living room look much bigger. Minimalist. That word that means getting rid of everything that has history. This house is perfect as it is, I replied, keeping calm. Oh, but you do not see things clearly anymore, Mom. With all due respect, this looks like a museum. It needs renovation, fresh air. Right, honey? She would turn to Ryan, who nodded like a robot. Fresh air. As if my 68 years of memories smelled stale. Then came the suggestion about the land, that plot by the lake that my father left me $50,000 in value, according to the last assessment. Half an acre with a view of the mountains, the place where my family spent summers when Ryan was a boy. Mrs. Miller, Ryan and I were thinking... Karen began one afternoon in October while we were drinking tea in the dining room. She had started addressing me more formally, using my last name as if putting distance between us. That land is abandoned. It only generates maintenance costs and taxes. Wouldn't it be smarter to sell it? Could you invest that money in something that generates returns for you? It is not for sale, I said sharply. But Mom, Ryan intervened. Karen is right. That land only costs you money. You don't even go to the lake anymore. I don't go because your father is not here to accompany me, I reminded him. And I saw how he looked away, uncomfortable. But that land belongs to the family. It stays in the family. Karen smiled, that condescending smile that I was starting to know too well. Of course, Mom. You know what you are doing. But the seed was already planted. Over the next few weeks, Ryan returned to the subject 3 more times, always with the same arguments, the same words, as if he had memorized them. In November, I lost my workshop. They arrived on a Saturday morning without warning. Karen brought 2 men with boxes. "Mom, we have wonderful news," she announced, walking directly into my sacred space, that room where my sewing machine had been singing for 30 years. I am going to work from home, and Ryan thought this room would be perfect as my office. Isn't he a sweetheart? I stood paralyzed with the thimble still on my finger, watching as those strangers started moving my things. "Wait," I said, finding my voice. "This is my workshop. I work here." "Oh, but you hardly sew anymore, Mom. And I do need a professional space. Do not worry. We are going to store everything very carefully in the utility room." The utility room. A space of 6 by 9 feet dark where a broom barely fit. "Ryan," I turned to my son, "did you authorize this?" He did not look me in the eye. "Mom, it is just a room. Besides, Karen needs to work. You can sew in your bedroom if you want." Something broke inside me in that moment. It was not dramatic. It was silent, like when a crack runs through glass imperceptible until everything shatters. I saw how they took out my antique Singer machine, the one that belonged to my grandmother, how they piled my fabrics into cardboard boxes, how they erased 40 years of my life in 40 minutes. Karen touched my shoulder. "Don't get like that, Mom. It is just a space. Change is good." I did not answer immediately. I just looked at her. And in that silence, I understood that I had lost something more than a room. I had lost my place in my own house. 2 weeks later, my family photo album disappeared. The leather-bound album that contained photos of 4 generations. The one that had the only photograph of my mother holding me as a newborn. My wedding with Ernest under the arch of white roses. Ryan's first smile. I looked for it for 3 days. I checked every drawer, every shelf, every corner. Nothing. Until one Sunday while cleaning, I found it in Karen's closet. It was in a box along with other objects of mine. My husband's pocket watched my pearl earrings, a silver rosary that my godmother gave me. I confronted her in the hallway with the album in my hands. "What is this doing in your closet?" Karen blinked, surprised for barely a second. Then that smile. "Oh, Mom, I stored it there for safety. It is just that lately you have been so distracted that I fear you might lose these valuable things. I was only taking care of them. I do not need you to take care of my things. But you do need it, Mrs. Miller." Her voice changed. It hardened just barely. "The other day you left the stove on and lost your glasses 3 times in a week. Ryan and I are worried. Lies. All lies. But said with such conviction that for a second I doubted myself. I went straight to Ryan. I showed him the album. I told him about the other things. Mom, Karen is only trying to help you. Helping me by stealing my memories. She is not stealing anything. She is taking care of them because lately you are very forgetful." "I am not forgetful. She is lying." Ryan closed his eyes as if listening to me hurt him. "Mom, please don't do this. Karen adores you. Why do you insist on seeing her as an enemy? Because she is—" I wanted to scream. "Because she is stealing everything from me. My house, my space, my son, my life. Because every day that passes, I am more alone in my own house." But I said none of that. None of— "I need you to trust me," I whispered. Ryan looked at me with an expression I will never forget, a mixture of pity and frustration. "Mom, I trust my wife, and I would like for you to do so as well." He left the room, leaving me alone with my recovered album and the devastating certainty that my son was no longer on my side, and Karen somewhere in the house was smiling, because she knew something I still did not fully understand. This was just beginning. December started with the cold. That damp cold that gets into your bones and does not leave even with 2 blankets. But the cold I felt came from somewhere else. It came from discovering that I was being erased from my own life. Linda, my lifelong friend, stopped coming for coffee on Tuesdays, not because she wanted to. When I finally managed to speak to her on the phone, she told me something that froze me. "Sue, I have gone to your house 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Karen always answers. She says you are resting, that you feel sick, that the doctor ordered bed rest. She even showed me some medical prescriptions with your name on them. Are you sick and hadn't told me?" Medical prescriptions with my name that I had never seen. "Linda, I am not sick. I have never told Karen that I do not want visitors." A long silence on the other end of the line. Then her cautious voice. "Sue, are you sure you are okay?" Even my best friend was starting to doubt me. Mr. Jacobs, my neighbor of 40 years, the one who brought me oranges from his tree every Sunday, also stopped knocking on my door. I saw him one afternoon on the street and asked him why. "Mrs. Miller," he said to me, uncomfortable, scratching the back of his neck. "Your daughter-in-law asked me not to bother you so much. She said that you need tranquility, that visitors upset you. She even showed me a paper from the neurologist." The neurologist. I had not seen a neurologist in my life. "Mr. Jacobs, that paper is fake." He looked at me with that expression I was already starting to recognize in everyone. Compassion mixed with disbelief. The way you look at someone who is losing their mind. Karen was building a narrative, and she was doing it so meticulously that even I began to question myself. Had I really left the stove on, like she said? Had I really forgotten 3 medical appointments that I supposedly had? Was it possible that my memory was failing me? One afternoon, while looking for my reading glasses, I found them inside the refrigerator, between the tomatoes and the cilantro. It made no sense. I would never do something like that. Or would I? Karen entered the kitchen just at that moment as if she had been waiting. "Oh, Mom, putting things in strange places again. Last night I found your wallet in the linen closet." I did not remember putting my wallet there, but there it was. "Ryan and I have been thinking," continued Karen with that soft voice she used for the worst ideas, "that maybe you need help, a nurse, someone to look after you." I do not need a nurse. But yes, Mrs. Miller, for your own safety. What would happen if you have an emergency and you are alone? At your age, any fall can be fatal. At your age, as if my 68 years turned me into an invalid. I am perfectly fine. "Of course you are." She smiled, patting me on the shoulder, patting me like you do to a child. "But we are going to hire someone anyway, just as a precaution." 3 days later, Stella arrived, a woman of about 50, dressed in white, whom Karen introduced as her new care assistant. I did not ask for an opinion. They did not consult me. She simply arrived. Stella was kind but firm. She controlled my medicines, vitamins that Karen had bought and that I did not need. She checked what I ate, suggested that I rest when I wanted to go out to the patio. In 2 weeks, my own house felt like a prison with invisible bars. But there was someone who did see the truth, someone who had realized what was happening. Matthew. My grandson started arriving after school when Karen was not there. He skipped the school bus route and walked 8 extra blocks just to see me. He entered through the service door that led to the alley, the one Karen still did not know I never locked. "Grandma?" he said to me one day, sitting on the floor of my room while we ate hidden animal crackers. "My dad is acting weird. He does everything Karen says, and she says horrible things about you when my dad isn't listening." "What kind of things?" Matt lowered his gaze, ashamed to have to repeat it. "That you are senile, that soon you won't be able to take care of yourself, that the house is too big for a person with mental problems." Mental problems. I hugged my grandson, and he hugged me back hard, as if he were afraid I would vanish. "You are not crazy, Grandma. I know you aren't. The thing is, she is mean." Mean. A simple word from a 13-year-old boy that captured perfectly what the adults refused to see. The straw that broke the camel's back came at a family gathering in mid-December. Ryan organized a dinner at a restaurant downtown to celebrate his birthday. His uncle's cousins, people I hadn't seen in months, attended. I dressed in my best coral-colored jacket and the silver earrings Ernest gave me for our 30th anniversary. I was excited. Finally, I would see my family. I could talk to them, explain what was happening. Karen received me at the entrance of the restaurant with a radiant smile. "Mom, you look so lovely. Come, I am going to seat you here with me to take care of you." She took me to a table in the corner, separated from the rest. Throughout the dinner, every time someone tried to come over to talk to me, Karen intervened with deadly delicacy. "Oh, sorry. It is just that Sue gets very tired with so much noise. Better to let her rest, okay? Or worse. She has good days and bad days. You know how this is. Today she is a little confused." Confused. I was perfectly lucid, but every time I tried to speak, tried to say something coherent, Karen interrupted me or diverted the conversation, and I saw how my family looked at me. With pity, with compassion, the way you look at someone who is no longer fully present. My cousin Cecilia whispered in my ear when she went to the bathroom, "Sue, what a blessing that Ryan found such a dedicated woman. Karen told me all the work it takes to care for you. You are very lucky to have her." Lucky. That night, back in my house, I sat in the darkness of my room and cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since Ernest's funeral. I cried because I was losing everything: my dignity, my autonomy, my family, my sanity. They were painting me as a senile old woman. And the worst of all was that they were doing it so well that even my loved ones believed them. Only Matt kept coming. Only he kept believing me. But a 13-year-old boy could not save me from this. I needed to do something. I needed a plan. What I did not know yet was that Karen also had a plan, one much bigger than I imagined, and she was about to execute it. On December 18th, 3 days before the winter solstice, Karen executed her definitive move. She arrived mid-morning with a man in a charcoal gray suit and a leather briefcase. He introduced himself as Attorney Gary Williams Notary, public number 47. He wore a professional smile and eyes that did not smile. "Mrs. Miller, it is a pleasure to meet you," he said, shaking my hand with calculated firmness. "Your son Ryan has hired me to help you with some very important legal matters that will protect your assets and your future." Ryan was there too, sitting in my living room as if it were his own lounge. He was wearing a light blue shirt and dress pants. He had that serious expression he used when he wanted to seem responsible. "Mom, sit down, please. This is important." I sat in the armchair that had been my grandmother's, the one with the high back upholstered in olive green velvet. I felt the cold of the fabric going through my cotton blouse. Karen brought me chamomile tea in my favorite cup, the porcelain one, with little blue flowers. A kind gesture that made me even more nervous. The notary opened his briefcase and took out a stack of documents. There were so many. The paper crunched when he spread them out on the coffee table, that dry sound that reminds you that what comes next is irreversible. "Mrs. Miller?" He began with a thick voice. "What we are going to do today is ensure that you are protected. At your age, it is fundamental to have everything in legal order. Ryan, as your only son and heir, must have the tools to take care of you if something were to happen. If something were to happen. As if death were a traffic accident that could occur on any corner." "What kind of documents are these?" I asked, trying to read the small print that danced in front of my eyes. I had forgotten my glasses in the bedroom. "Mom, they are general powers of attorney," Ryan explained, leaning forward, "so that I can handle your affairs if you cannot. There is also an updated will and a trust to protect the house." Protect the house? Those words again. I do not understand why I need this now. Because it is the responsible thing Mrs. Miller... Karen intervened, sitting next to me too close. "Imagine something happens to you, a heart attack, an accident. Without these documents, everything gets complicated. The paperwork becomes impossible. Ryan wouldn't be able to help you." The notary began to explain each document with that monotone voice lawyers have when they know nobody is really listening. He spoke of irrevocable powers, asset administration, guardianship, legal representation. The words mixed in my head like quicksand. Basically, he summarized, you grant your son, Ryan, the authority to administer all your assets. The house, the land by the lake, your bank accounts. He will take the financial and legal decisions that are necessary for your well-being. All decisions. My house, my land, my money. But I can make my own decisions, I said, feeling my voice sound small like that of a scared girl. Of course you can, Mom. This is just a precaution. Ryan put a hand on my shoulder, a hand that was supposed to comfort me but weighed like lead. Karen brought a gold pen closer. Mom, trust your son. He only wants the best for you. I looked at the documents. 20, 30 pages of tiny print, clauses, subclauses, legal terms I had never seen. My head began to hurt. That stab behind the eyes that warned me I was about to cry. Can I read them calmly? Take them to review with another lawyer. The silence that followed was dense as mud. Mom. Ryan's voice hardened. Barely. Don't you trust me? That question, that damn question that had no correct answer. It isn't that, son. It is just that there are many things, and Attorney Williams is doing us a favor coming all the way here. Karen interrupted. He's a very busy man. If we leave it for later, we will have to wait weeks for another appointment. And you know that during the holidays, everything gets complicated. Pressure. I felt the pressure closing around my throat like a necklace too tight. Besides, added the notary, all of this is standard. Thousands of families do it. It is simply ordering your assets intelligently. Ryan looked at me with those eyes I had known since he was a baby. Those eyes that once looked at me with pure love. Mom, please do it for me, so that I can sleep peacefully knowing that you are protected. And I signed. I signed because I was tired, because my son asked me to, because Karen smiled at me with that poisonous sweetness, because the notary drummed his fingers on the briefcase as if saying, hurry up, because I didn't want to seem like a stubborn and paranoid old woman. I signed every page they indicated, 10, 15 signatures, my name again and again, Susan Miller. A signature that became more shaky with every paper. When I finished, the notary gathered everything with military efficiency. Perfect. In 3 business days, everything will be registered and legalized. They left an hour later. Ryan kissed my forehead. Thanks, Mom. You did the right thing. Karen hugged me, and in that hug, I felt her victory. Rest, Mom. Everything is going to be fine now. That night, Matt arrived through the service door as always, but he came with his face distraught. Grandma. He whispered, closing my bedroom door. I heard them. Karen and my dad. They were in the car. They thought I couldn't hear because I had my headphones on, but I wasn't listening to music. What did they say, my love? Karen said to my dad, It is done. She signed everything. Now we have total control. In less than 2 months, we can start with the next step. Matt swallowed saliva, and my dad answered her. You are still a genius, babe. It was worth the wait. I felt the floor open beneath my feet. Next step? I repeated like an idiot. What next step? I don't know, Grandma, but Karen was laughing. She was laughing like a movie villain. That morning, I did not sleep. At 6 a.m, when the sky was barely starting to lighten, I called Ryan. I needed to talk to him. I needed him to explain to me what I had really signed. Karen answered his phone. Good morning, Mom. Ryan went on a trip, an urgent project in Chicago. He will be gone 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Just now. Did he leave the documents I signed? I need to review them. Oh no, the notary took everything. They are official documents. They are already in the registration process. What do you need them for? To read them calmly. A pause. Then that crystal clear laugh. Oh, Mom, but you already signed them. You can't change anything now. Rest. Do not worry about those things. Ryan is in charge of everything now." She hung up. I stayed there sitting in the darkness of my room, holding the dead phone, finally understanding the complete truth. I had just handed my entire life to a snake, and my own son had opened the door to let her in. I spent 3 days in a fog of fear and confusion. 3 days trying to remember exactly what I had signed, what words I had read between those endless pages. But my memory was like water between fingers. On the 4th day, Mr. Jacobs knocked on my door at 7 in the morning. He was pale, sweating despite the December cold. He had his usual cap squeezed between his hands as if it were a life preserver. "Mrs. Miller, forgive me for coming so early," he whispered, looking toward both sides of the hallway like a conspirator. "But I need to tell you something. I cannot stay silent." I led him into the kitchen. I made him coffee while he wrung his hands, nervous, searching for the words. "Yesterday I saw her, your daughter-in-law, at the Main Street coffee shop, that one on the corner, and my heart was already starting to race. She was with a man, not your son, another man in a suit with a briefcase. They were reviewing papers on the table, and Mrs. Miller leaned forward, lowering her voice more. I heard part of the conversation. They were talking about your house, about valuations, about deadlines. The man said something about, as soon as the powers are registered, we can proceed with the sale. The cup I was holding trembled in my hands. Sale. What sale were they talking about? I didn't manage to hear more, but Mrs. Miller, that man, I have seen him before. He is a real estate agent. He has an office 3 blocks up. His name is Herbert Camp. It was hard to breathe. The walls of my kitchen, those walls that had heard 70 years of family conversations, seemed to close in on me. "Thank you for telling me, Mr. Jacobs." When he left, I remained seated, watching my coffee get cold. Sale. Karen was talking about selling. What, the house? My house. It couldn't be. Ryan would never allow that. Or would he? I needed help. Real professional help. Someone who could tell me exactly what I had signed and what it meant. I thought of Linda, my friend since high school, a retired lawyer, the only person I could trust completely. I dialed her number with trembling fingers. "Sue, I'm glad you called. I was worried about you." "Linda, I need you to help me. Urgent." We met that same afternoon at her house, far from prying ears. I told her everything. The documents, the notary, the conversation Matt heard, what Mr. Jacobs saw in the cafe. Linda listened to me in silence, taking notes in her yellow legal pad. When I finished, she took off her glasses and looked at me with a seriousness that froze my blood. "Sue, this is serious, very serious. I need to get copies of those documents." How the notary took them all. Notaries are required to keep files. "I am going to request certified copies. You are the grantor. You have the right." She stood up, already dialing numbers on her phone. "Meanwhile, I am going to do some digging." "What kind of digging?" "On Karen. Do you know her full name, Karen Smith? Or whatever name she uses. Where is she from?" I realized with horror that I did not know. In 6 months, I had never really known where that woman came from. Who were her parents? Where had she studied? Every question I asked was always deflected with a smile. "I don't know." I admitted, feeling shame burn my cheeks. Linda nodded without judging me. "I am going to find out. I have contacts. Give me 3 days." Those 3 days were torture. Every time I saw Karen, every time she smiled at me with that fake sweetness, I wanted to scream at her, "I know what you are doing." But I kept quiet. For the first time in weeks, I used her same weapon. Pretending. I pretended to be confused. I pretended to be tired. I pretended to be the foolish old woman she needed me to be. And meanwhile, I waited. Linda's call came the afternoon of December 22nd. Her voice sounded different, tense. "Sue, come to my house. Now." I found something. When I arrived, there were documents scattered all over her dining room table. official papers, internet printouts, photographs. "Sit down," she told me, and the tone told me I would need to be. She showed me the documents I had signed. Linda had gotten them through a colleague who was still working. We read them together line by line. My stomach turned to stone. Irrevocable general power of attorney. Ryan could sell, mortgage, dispose of any property in my name without my consent. The will left everything to Ryan. And the trust. The trust was a legal trap that in practice put the house under his immediate control. "Sue," Linda squeezed my hand. "With these documents, and given that Ryan is married under a joint property regime with Karen, she also has control." I finished the sentence feeling nauseous. "Exactly. They can sell everything. The house, the land, illegally. They do not need your authorization." I collapsed in the chair. My whole world, my entire heritage, everything my grandparents built, what my parents cared for, what Ernest and I protected for 40 years of marriage, everything was now in the hands of a woman I barely knew. "But there is more," Linda said, and her voice had an edge of contained fury. "I investigated Karen. I have a cousin who works in the civil registry in Nevada. Sue, Karen is married." "I know. To Ryan." "No, to another man, Michael Foster. They got married 5 years ago. They never got divorced. The world stopped." "What are you saying?" "That the marriage to your son is bigamy. It is void. It is a federal crime." Linda put a copy of the marriage certificate in front of me. There it was, Karen Smith, married to Michael Foster, March 15th, 2020, Las Vegas, Nevada. "This is not all," continued Linda. Taking out more papers, I found similar cases. In Arizona in 2021, a 73-year-old lady reported a woman named Karen Smith for fraud. The woman married her widowed son, obtained powers of attorney, tried to sell the family home. The case was closed for lack of evidence, but the pattern is identical. She showed me articles from local newspapers, archived complaints testimonies. In Oregon 2022, the same thing. Another family, another vulnerable son, another widow almost stripped of her assets. In total, I found 4 cases in 3 different states, and nobody has stopped her. She changes her name slightly, uses fake documents, moves fast. By the time the authorities react, she has already disappeared with the money. Linda looked me straight in the eye. "Sue, you are not paranoid. You are not crazy. You are the victim of an elaborate scam, and your son is her accomplice, conscious or not." The tears came then. All the ones I had held back for months came out in waves. I cried for my son, hypnotized by that viper. I cried for my house, for my stolen dignity. I cried for being so naive, so trusting. Linda hugged me while I sobbed. "We can still do something, but we need solid proof. We need evidence that ties Karen directly to the fraud." How I have a niece, Miranda. She is a lawyer specializing in family fraud in the city, one of the best. We can consult her. That night, I returned to my house with a clear goal for the first time in months. I was going to stop her. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to get my life back, even if I had to turn into something I had never been, even if I had to play as dirty as she did. 3 weeks passed since Linda showed me the truth. 3 weeks in which I did not speak to Ryan, who was still traveling. 3 weeks planning in silence with Miranda, the lawyer niece. But Karen moved faster. January 15th dawned gray. One of those days when the sky hangs low with clouds that seem to crush the city. I was making oatmeal on the stove when I heard the banging on the door. It was not a normal knock. It was the sound of authority. Firm, insistent official. I opened it with my apron still on, stained with cinnamon. Karen was there, but she did not come alone. By her side, there were 2 locksmiths with toolboxes, and a man in a dark suit holding a brown leather folder. Behind them, a court officer in uniform and a bored expression. "Good morning, Mom," said Karen with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I am sorry to have to do this, but it is for your own good." "Do what?" The man in the suit stepped forward. "Mrs. Miller, I am attorney Arthur Sanchez from the family court. I bring a temporary protection order." He handed me some papers. The letters danced in front of my eyes. I read isolated words: interdiction, mental incapacity, danger to herself. "I do not understand. What is this?" "It is a procedure to protect you," explained the attorney with that bureaucratic voice officials use when they do not want to get emotionally involved. "Your family requested an evaluation of your mental state. We have here a medical report from Dr. Oswald Price, neurologist, stating that you present signs of advanced senile dementia and need specialized care." "What doctor? I have never seen any Dr. Price." Karen sighed theatrically. "Oh, Mom, that is exactly why. You see how your memory is. Dr. Price examined you 2 weeks ago. Ryan took you. Don't you remember lies? It was all a lie. Ryan hadn't been here in a month. The order establishes that for your safety, you must be transferred temporarily to a geriatric residence while the evaluation is completed," continued the attorney, "and that the property must be secured to prevent you from hurting yourself or causing damage." "Secured?" My voice rose in volume. "This is my house. You cannot take me out of my own house." "Ma'am, please do not get upset." The officer approached, putting a hand on his belt. "We are only complying with the judicial order." The locksmiths were already entering. Karen was directing them with gestures. "Change that lock first, then that one." This could not be happening. It was not real. "Wait, call my lawyer. This is illegal." "Mom, please." Karen approached, trying to take me by the arm. I recoiled as if she burned. "We do not want to use force. Be reasonable. This is temporary only until you feel better." The neighbors were starting to peek out. Margaret from across the street, Mr. Jacobs from next door, the Harrison family from the corner. I saw their faces of curiosity and pity through their windows. They were taking me out of my house in front of the whole neighborhood. "I have rights," I said, feeling how the tears were starting to cloud my vision. "You cannot do this without a trial, without me defending myself." "There was already a preliminary hearing," responded the attorney, checking his papers. "Your son Ryan appeared as the responsible family member. The judge determined that immediate risk existed. Ryan isn't even in the city." "He was. He arrived yesterday specifically for this." Karen smiled. "He is at a hotel waiting for everything to be resolved. He didn't want to come because it hurts him too much to see you like this, but he signed everything necessary." The sound of a drill piercing my front door went through me like a bullet. They were changing the locks. They were sealing my house while I was still inside. "No, you can't," my voice broke. And then I heard the scream. "Grandma!" Matt appeared running down the hallway. He had just arrived from school, still with his backpack on his shoulder. His face was undone, full of terror. "What are you doing to my grandma?" He threw himself towards me, hugging me with that desperate strength children have when they are afraid something terrible is happening. "Matt, honey, go home," said Karen with a sweet voice. "This is adult stuff." "No, you are not going to take my grandma out of her house. She is not crazy. You are the one who is wrong." The officer approached. "Kid, don't complicate things. My grandma is right." "You guys are stealing—" Matt squeezed me tighter as if he could protect me with his thin 13-year-old body. "Call the real police. This is a robbery." Karen lost her mask for a second. I saw it. A shadow of irritation crossed her perfect face. "Ryan," she said to the phone she had just taken out, "your son is here making a scene. I need you to come control him." But then something happened that she did not expect. Mr. Jacobs came out of his house, then Margaret, then the Harrisons. One by one, my neighbors of 40 years began to approach. "What is going on here?" asked Mr. Jacobs with his deep voice. "A private family matter," responded the attorney, uncomfortable. "I ask you to retreat." "Mrs. Miller is our neighbor since I was a child," intervened Margaret, crossing her arms. "We are not going to let you take her just like that. Do you have an eviction order? Show it to us." "It is a protection order, not an eviction," the officer clarified. Protection from what? From her own house. Mr. Jacobs planted himself in front of the door. That lady is perfectly fine in the head. I see her every single day. She holds a normal conversation, she does her things. This smells fishy. The locksmith stopped looking at the scene with discomfort. The lawyer was sweating despite the cold. Vanessa gripped her phone so hard that her knuckles turned white. "If you do not step aside, I will have to call the police," the officer threatened. "Call them," challenged Mr. Jacobs. "And when they arrive, you will explain with what authority you are evicting an elderly woman from her property, based on a paper that nobody has verified." There was a moment of tension where everything could have exploded. Matt was crying silently against my shoulder. I was trembling so much that I could barely stand on my feet. Finally, the lawyer put away his papers. "This is not going to stay like this. We will come back with more authority. When you come back, bring a real order," said Mrs. Margaret. Vanessa looked at me with pure hatred that she no longer tried to hide. "This only delays the inevitable mother-in-law," she hissed. "In the end, you will get out of this house, one way or another." They left, the locksmiths, the lawyer. The officer Vanessa was the last to leave, walking with those heels that went click, click, click on the tiles of my driveway. When the door closed, my legs gave way. I fell to the floor. Matt and Mr. Jacobs held me, but I had no strength left. I cried like I had never cried in my life. Sobs that came from the deepest part from a place of pain I did not know existed. They had humiliated me in front of my neighbors. They had treated me like a demented person. They had tried to rip me from my home as if I were trash. And my son, my own son, had signed the papers for that to happen. That night, alone in my room with the door locked and Matt sleeping on the couch, in the living room because he refused to leave, I found the photograph of Frank on my nightstand. I took it with trembling hands. "My love," I whispered to that black and white image. "What do I do? They took our son from me. They are taking everything from me." And in the silence of that dark room, something changed inside me. I stopped feeling fear, and I started feeling fury. I cried for 3 full days. The first day I cried for my lost son, for the boy who once built sandcastles at the lake house and who was now signing documents to kick me out of my house. The second day, I cried for my naivete, for having opened my door to that viper with a porcelain smile. The third day, I cried for all the times I had swallowed my words, that I had lowered my head, that I had allowed them to treat me as if I were invisible. But on the fourth day, I stopped crying. I got up before dawn. I bathed with cold water, one of those showers that wakes up even your soul. I dressed in my favorite denim jeans and my mustard-colored blouse, the one Frank used to say made me look powerful. I braided my hair like my grandmother used to do, firm without a strand out of place. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and really looked at myself without pity, without excuses. I saw a woman of 68 years who had survived poverty, the death of her parents, 40 years of marriage with its ups and downs, widowhood and loneliness. A woman who had sewn for decades, who had raised a son alone when Frank worked double shifts, who had managed a house and a business without anyone's help. "You are not a victim," I said to my reflection. "You are Susan Miller, and nobody, absolutely nobody, is going to snatch away what is yours." My voice sounded different, deeper, firmer. That same day, I called Morgan Linda's niece. We met at a coffee shop downtown away from familiar eyes. She was a woman of about 35 with rectangular glasses and a folder full of notes. No fake smiles, no condescension. "Mrs. Miller," she said after listening to my complete story, "what I am going to tell you is not pleasant. Vanessa has the legal advantage. The documents she signed are valid. The interdiction order, although it stopped, can be reactivated. And your son is on her side, which complicates everything." "So have I lost already?" I did not say that. Morgan leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I said she has the advantage, but con artists like Vanessa make mistakes. They get overconfident. And when they do, we stop playing on their turf and start playing on ours." What do you need me to do? First, pretend. I need you to be the confused lady that Vanessa expects you to be. Lower her guard. Make her feel she won. Every word Morgan said made sense. Vanessa expected resistance drama fights. She would not expect submission. Second evidence. We need to prove the fraud irrefutably. Recordings, documents, witnesses. I have Matt. My grandson heard conversations. A minor can testify, but we need more. We need direct proof linking Vanessa to the deception. I spent the next week investigating in silence. Morgan taught me how to use recording apps on my old cell phone. She showed me how to document every suspicious conversation, every veiled threat. And we discovered something else. Morgan had a contact at the civil registry in Nevada. Not only did he confirm Vanessa's marriage to Michael Foster, he discovered that this man had been visiting the city. There were hotel records, restaurant receipts. Vanessa was not alone in this. They are working together, Morgan explained to me one afternoon, showing me photographs her private investigator had taken. Vanessa seduces, marries, obtains power of attorney. Michael handles the sales part and money laundering. They have done this at least 4 times in the last 6 years. I saw the photos. Vanessa and Michael sitting in a restaurant in the upscale district reviewing documents. Vanessa handing him a thick envelope. Michael kissing her on the lips. My son was just another piece in her game. What do we do with this? We wait for the perfect moment to use it. Meanwhile, you continue with the acting. And I acted. When Vanessa came over, I was confused. I forgot where I put things. I asked for Robert with a trembling voice. I thanked her for taking such good care of me. I saw how she relaxed her shoulders, how her smile became more authentic, how she started talking on the phone without hiding so much. Matt became my secret ally. That 15-year-old boy had more courage than many adults. We installed tiny cameras together in the living room, in the dining room, in the places where Vanessa talked the most. They were the size of buttons bought at a spy shop that Morgan knew. Grandma. Matt told me one afternoon while we were adjusting a camera behind the grandfather clock, "When this is over, are you going to forgive my dad?" The question hurt me more than any humiliation. I do not know, sweetheart. First I need to save us. Then we will see if there is anything to forgive. The recordings began to bear fruit. We captured Vanessa talking to Michael about liquidating the property before March. We recorded her conversation with a corrupt notary about speeding up the deed registration. We documented every lie, every manipulation. But we needed something else, something definitive. Something that left no doubt whatsoever of her criminal intentions. And then Vanessa herself gave us the opportunity. One afternoon in mid-February, she announced to me with that fake joy, "Mother-in-law, what do you think if we have a late New Year's dinner, a family celebration to start this year right? We invite everyone, uncles, cousins, neighbors. We show that we are a united family. A united family." The words gave me nausea, but I immediately understood what Morgan had taught me to see. This was her final play, an exhibition of her care toward me before the final blow. "That sounds beautiful," I replied with the voice of a grateful grandmother. "It has been so long since we had a party at home." Vanessa smiled victoriously. "Leave everything to me. You just enjoy." When she left, I called Morgan. She is going to host the dinner. The perfect date for her final plan. "Then it will be the perfect date for ours," Morgan replied. "Mrs. Miller, are you ready to end this?" I looked out the window of my living room. My house bathed in the golden light of the sunset. The walls that knew every secret of my family. The floor that had seen 3 generations grow up. "More than ready," I said. "I am hungry for it." Because I had discovered something about myself during those weeks of feigning weakness. I was not weak. I never had been. I had just been asleep, and now I was completely awake. The New Year's dinner was set for December 29th, a late date, but Vanessa insisted, so that everyone recovers from the past holiday's mother-in-law. It will be our own celebration. Ours. as if we had ever been a team. I had less than 3 weeks to prepare the perfect trap, 3 weeks to turn her moment of triumph into her most spectacular downfall. Morgan arrived at my house disguised as an internet technician. She wore navy blue coveralls and a real toolbox. Vanessa was not there. She had gone shopping for the party. "We have 2-hour windows when she goes out," Morgan told me while installing more sophisticated equipment. "We are going to cover every angle." We installed directional microphones in the dining room lamps, high-definition cameras inside the photo frames in the living room, a continuous recording system that activated with motion. Everything connected to a cloud server that only Morgan and I could access. "If she sneezes in this house, we are going to have it recorded," she said with a fierce smile. But we needed more than recordings. We needed Vanessa to incriminate herself completely. And for that, we needed to know exactly what her plan was. The answer came 4 days later. Matt came running one afternoon, his face red from the effort. He had run the 8 blocks from his school without stopping. "Grandma, I have it. I have everything." He had done something incredibly risky and extraordinarily intelligent. Knowing that Vanessa kept her laptop in my old office, he had installed a spyware program when she went to the bathroom, a program that Morgan had given him which copied all emails and documents. "Matt, that was dangerous." I told him, although my heart swelled with pride. "You said that sometimes you have to risk to win Grandma." We reviewed the files that same night. Morgan came in person, and what we found froze our blood. Vanessa had a buyer, a real estate developer named Herbert Fields, the same one Mr. Jacobs had seen. The price $450,000, about $50,000 below the real value enough discount to tempt him enough money to disappear comfortably. But there was more. Emails between Vanessa and Michael Foster, planning every detail. "As soon as we have the deed transferred, we sell. We split 60-40 as always. She will never know what happened until it is too late." And Robert? Robert is an idiot in love. By the time he wakes up, we will already be in the Bahamas. He can console himself with his share. His share. They were going to give a pittance to my son and disappear with the rest. Another email, more recent, detailed the complete plan. After the dinner on the 29th, we present the final declaration of incapacity. Judge Morales is already fixed. We gave him $15,000. On January 2nd, he signs the definitive interdiction. On January 5th, we transfer the deed. On the 10th, we close the sale. On the 15th, we are out of the country. They had every step calculated, corrupt judge included. "This is gold," said Morgan, copying everything onto multiple devices. "With this, we can not only stop her, but put her in jail for years. Bigamy, fraud, document, forgery, bribery of a public official. But how do we use this without her escaping?" Morgan smiled. That smile reminded me that she was not just any lawyer. She was a hunter. "We give her exactly what she wants. The perfect dinner in front of all the witnesses. And when she feels safest, most victorious, that is when we show our cards." We spent the next few days refining every detail. Morgan contacted a prosecutor she trusted, someone who was not on Vanessa's payroll. She showed him the preliminary evidence. The prosecutor was very interested. "I need you to catch her in the act," he said. "With the recordings and documents, it is enough for a warrant, but if we get her to directly confess her fraudulent intentions in front of witnesses, the case becomes airtight." So we designed the trap inside the trap. I would act my role of the confused grandmother during the dinner. Vanessa would get confident. At some point, she would go out to make that call she always made thinking no one was listening. But Matt would follow her, and he would record everything with the phone Morgan had given him, one with professional quality audio. "What if she suspects?" asked Matt, nervous but determined. "She is not going to suspect a child," replied Morgan. "Criminals never suspect children. It is their biggest mistake." We taught Matt exactly what to do. follow her discreetly, keep the phone recording in his pocket, come back running to tell me what he heard out loud in front of witnesses. I need it to look natural, I instructed him. Scared genuine, as if you really just discovered something terrible. Matt practiced his acting for days. That boy had an innate talent. Meanwhile, I discovered something else while reviewing the cameras we already had installed. Vanessa had been taking things from the house little by little, thinking I would not notice. My grandmother's German porcelain tea set the silver candlesticks from the dining room Frank's gold watch. She was taking them out in her huge bag, almost a suitcase, every time she came. She was selling them. We found the ads online. Family antiques, excellent condition, for a fraction of their real value. She is financing her escape, said Morgan, gathering cash that cannot be traced. I asked Morgan to buy some of those pieces through an intermediary as additional evidence, and because the idea of recovering them gave me dark satisfaction. Robert appeared 3 days before the dinner. I had not spoken to him in weeks. He arrived with flowers, yellow roses, my favorites, as if that could erase what he had done. "Mom," he said at the entrance, with that voice of a repentant child he used when he did something bad. "We need to talk." I let him in. Acting. Always acting. "I know you have been upset. I know the order thing was strong, but you have to understand that we only worry about you." "I know, son," I said with a trembling voice perfectly measured. "Vanessa only wants the best for me." I saw the relief on his face. How easy it was to fool him. How quickly he believed what he wanted to believe. "The dinner is going to be beautiful," he continued. "Vanessa has worked so hard to make it special, to start the year well as a family." Family. That word again, so handled, so empty coming from his lips. "I am very grateful." I lied, and I hugged him. I felt him relax against me. "I am very lucky to have a son who takes care of me so much." When he left, Morgan was in the kitchen listening to everything through the microphones. "Impeccable acting," she said. "You deserve an Academy Award." "It is not acting when it hurts," I replied. And for the first time since all this started, Morgan looked at me with something more than professionalism. She looked at me with compassion. "It is going to hurt more before it gets better," she warned me. "When everything comes to light, Robert is going to be devastated. He is going to know that his wife is a con artist, that his mother fooled him so well to trap him, that he has been a pawn in a game he did not even know existed." I already know. I sat in the kitchen chair, the one where I had peeled 1,000 pounds of potatoes throughout my life. But I prefer that he breaks now and can heal, rather than Vanessa destroying him completely. The night of the 28th, Morgan made a last check of all the equipment. The cameras worked perfectly. The microphones picked up even the slightest whisper. The prosecutor had 2 agents ready to act when we received the signal. "Tomorrow," said Morgan, packing her tools, "everything changes." "Tomorrow," I repeated, feeling my heart beating hard against my ribs. "I get my life back." That night, I could not sleep. I stayed awake looking at the ceiling, imagining every possible scenario. Vanessa arrested, Robert crying, the family in shock, the neighbors murmuring. Was I doing the right thing? I looked at Frank's photograph on my nightstand, the same one I had looked at the day I decided to stop crying. "Tell me I am doing the right thing," I whispered to him, and in the silence of that room, in the stillness of the early morning, I felt something. It was not his voice. It was something deeper, a certainty that came from that place where love and strength meet. I was doing the only thing I could do. I was surviving, and we arrived at the moment where this story began. The night of December 29th, the table shining with my ivory tablecloth, the aroma of turkey filling every corner of my house. 23 guests celebrating without knowing they were about to witness something they would never forget. I had spent the whole day preparing, not just the dinner. I had prepared myself, mentally, emotionally, like a boxer before stepping into the ring. Morgan was outside in a car parked 3 houses down, monitoring all cameras and microphones from her laptop. The prosecutor and 2 agents waited for her signal in an unmarked vehicle at the corner. Matt knew his role. He had hugged me before the guests arrived. "We are going to win, Grandma. We are going to win." Vanessa had arrived early, of course, dressed in a wine-colored dress that probably cost more than my refrigerator. Perfect, radiant, ready for her moment of glory. "Mother-in-law, everything looks beautiful," she told me, kissing my cheek, a Judas kiss. "This night is going to be special. I feel it." "Me too," I replied, and I was not lying. The guests kept arriving. Robert and Vanessa played at being the perfect couple, attentive, affectionate. He brought me water. She adjusted my chair. Pure theater. Mr. Jacobs was there with his wife, Linda with her complicit look, the uncles, the cousins, the Harrison family, everyone eating, drinking, laughing without knowing that the floor beneath their feet was about to open up. At 11 at night, when everyone was relaxed with the punch and the turkey, Vanessa took out her phone. I saw it. That gesture I knew so well. "Excuse me, mother-in-law, it is work. You know how it is in peak season." She walked away toward the hallway, toward the study that was once my sewing workshop. Matt looked at me. I nodded almost imperceptibly. My grandson got up from the table naturally as if going to the bathroom. Nobody noticed anything. The adults continued their conversations, oblivious to everything. 3 minutes passed that felt like hours. I tried to maintain composure, smiling at Mr. Jacobs' comments about the price of gas, but my heart beat so fast I thought everyone could hear it. And then he appeared. Matt running down the hallway. His face was white as paper. His hands were trembling visibly. His eyes were wide open, full of a terror he did not have to fake because it was real. He had heard things no child should hear about his family. He stumbled over his uncle's chair, almost falling. Everyone turned to look at him. "Grandma." His voice came out broken, choked. "Grandma, we have to go, now. I heard everything. She spoke about you." The dining room fell silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, dense. "What happened, Matt?" Robert stood up, confused. "Vanessa." Matt gasped, trying to catch his breath. "She was talking on the phone. She said that in 15 minutes the police would come for Grandma, that the old lady suspects nothing." "What did you do, Grandma? Why are the police looking for you?" Everyone started talking at the same time, overlapping voices, confusion shock. Vanessa appeared at that moment, putting the phone in her purse. Her face showed genuine surprise for half a second before composing itself. "Oh, Matt, what are you saying? I think you misunderstood." I did not misunderstand anything. Matt pulled his phone from his pocket. I recorded it all. Vanessa's face paled, barely, but I saw it. "Matt, give me that phone," said Robert, extending his hand. "No, you need to hear this." Matt put the audio on speaker. Vanessa's voice filled the dining room, clear, unmistakable. "Almost everything is ready, my love. The old hag signed everything we needed. In 15 minutes, when the people from the court arrive with the definitive order, they declare her officially incompetent, and we take total control. Fields already has the money ready to close the sale on January 5th, $450,000. We go to the Bahamas on the 15th as planned." Absolute silence. "My love," continued Vanessa's recorded voice, "Robert still knows nothing right perfect. When he discovers the house is already sold, we tell him his mom authorized it before losing her mind completely. By then we will already be out of the country with our share." And then a man's voice, Michael Foster, her real husband. "You are brilliant, baby. This was the best one we have done. The idiot Robert did not even suspect you are still married to me." A shared laugh, chilling in its coldness. The phone kept playing, but nobody was listening anymore. Everyone was looking at Vanessa. Robert was paralyzed. His face went through a dozen emotions in seconds. Confusion, disbelief, understanding, horror, devastation. Vanessa! His voice came out like a broken whisper. What is this? Robert, I can explain. Vanessa took a step toward him, but he recoiled as if she burned. Are you married to another man? It is complicated. Were you going to sell my mother's house? Vanessa looked around. 23 pairs of eyes locked on her, all exits blocked by bodies and chairs. The trap closed, and then she did what cornered predators do. She attacked. Yes, she screamed, and her entire mask of sweetness evaporated. Yes, I was going to sell this damn house. And do you know why? Because this crazy old woman has been poisoning you against me from day one, Robert. She never loved me. She never accepted me. I never loved you, I said, standing up from my chair, feeling every pair of eyes turn toward me. Because from the first day, I knew exactly what you were. I took out my own phone. With completely steady hands, I opened the folder Morgan and I had prepared. Vanessa Foster. I said, my voice clear and strong, nothing like the confused old woman I had pretended to be. Married to Michael Foster since March 15, 2020 in Nevada. Accused of patrimonial fraud in Texas in 2021. Investigated for the same in Ohio in 2022, wanted by authorities for bigamy and document forgery. I projected the images onto the living room television I had prepared. Marriage certificate with Michael, photographs of them together, emails planning the fraud, receipts for the antiques from my house that she had sold, everything. For months you made me believe I was losing my mind. I continued feeling the tears finally arrive, but they were no longer tears of weakness. They were of purified fury. You stole my objects. You changed the stones in my mother's ring. You isolated me from my friends. You tried to take my house, my dignity, my sanity. Mom. Robert was crying, silent tears rolling down his face. Mom, I didn't know. I thought... You thought what she wanted you to think because that was exactly what she wanted you to think. Vanessa started moving toward the door, but Mr. Jacobs and two cousins blocked her. Not so fast, said Mr. Jacobs, and then exactly at 11:15 minutes after Vanessa's call, the doorbell rang. But it wasn't the corrupt court officials. It was 3 police agents, with the prosecutor, and with Morgan, my warrior lawyer, holding a folder full of arrest warrants. Vanessa Foster, said the prosecutor with an official voice, you are under arrest for the crimes of bigamy, fraud, document forgery, and attempted dispossession. You have the right to remain silent. Vanessa tried to run. She really tried. But she didn't even make it 3 steps before the agent stopped her. This is illegal. You can't arrest me. Robert, help me. Tell them I am your wife. Robert looked at her, and in his gaze I saw something break permanently. You are not my wife, he said with a dead voice. You never were. They put the handcuffs on her. The click of the metal closing was the most satisfying sound I had heard in my life. Michael Foster is already in custody, informed the prosecutor. They arrested him 2 hours ago at his hotel. He is cooperating, by the way. He already confessed everything. Vanessa looked at me then, and in her eyes I saw something I had never seen. Real fear. How? She whispered. How did you know? I got close to her. Close enough so only she could hear my words. Because you underestimated an old woman. You thought that because I was 68, I was stupid. That because I was kind, I was weak. That because I loved my son, I was blind. I straightened up, looking down at her for the first time. You learned that experience beats cheap cunning. That a mother's love protects better than any legal document. And that never ever should you wake a lioness who only wants to protect her pride. They took her away. Vanessa shouting threats. Vanessa crying. Vanessa finally showing her true face. That of a cheap con artist caught in her own trap. The dining room remained silent after the door closed, and then Robert fell to his knees in front of me. "Mom," he sobbed like I hadn't seen him cry since he was a child. "Mom, forgive me, forgive me. I was an idiot. I was a horrible son. I betrayed you. I almost lost you everything for... He couldn't finish. The crying broke him completely. I knelt with him, feeling my old knees protest but not caring. "Son," I told him, lifting his face so he would look at me. "You were deceived by a professional, by someone who has destroyed families for years. You are not an idiot. You are human. Will you ever be able to forgive me?" I looked at my son, my only son. The baby I had carried, the boy I had raised, the man I almost lost. "I already forgave you," I whispered, "but now you have to learn to forgive yourself, and that is going to take time, a lot of time." Matt joined the hug, then Linda, then Mr. Jacobs. One by one, everyone I loved surrounded me in that massive hug, which was part celebration, part catharsis, part grief for what we almost lost. The New Year's dinner never finished, but nobody cared, because that night we didn't celebrate a new year. We celebrated something much more important: justice. The days that followed the arrest were a whirlwind of statements, lawyers, and newspaper headlines. Couple of con artists dismantled after tricking families for years read the front page of the local paper. There was a photograph of Vanessa being escorted by police, with her face covered so different from the perfect woman who entered my house 6 months ago. Morgan accompanied me to every hearing. The first one was 3 days after the arrest. Vanessa appeared in court with a public defender because all the money she had stolen was already frozen by court order. She looked at me from the defendant's bench. There was no longer hatred in her eyes, only a gray emptiness, the look of someone who knows she lost. The prosecutor presented the evidence: the recordings, the emails, the forged documents, the testimony of Michael Foster, who effectively had sung everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. "Vanessa Foster has operated this scheme in 4 different states," explained the prosecutor to the judge. "She seduces vulnerable men, usually widowers or divorced men, with elderly mothers. She marries, obtains fraudulent legal powers, sells the properties, and disappears. In total, she has defrauded 7 families for over $1 million. $1 million. 7 families destroyed. I could have been the 8th. The judge ordered pretrial detention without bail. "Evident flight risk," he sentenced. Vanessa also faced charges for bigamy. Her marriage to Robert was officially annulled on January 8th, as if it had never existed. How do you erase an ink error on an important document Michael Foster received 6 years in prison for fraud and criminal conspiracy? Vanessa, for having a record and being the brains of the operation, received 8 years without the possibility of reduction for good behavior during the first 4 years. 8 years. It wasn't enough for all the damage she had caused, but it was something. We also discovered the corrupt judge Vanessa had bribed. Judge Morales was arrested 2 weeks later. His career destroyed, his reputation stained forever. He would face his own trial. "Justice is slow, but it arrives," Morgan told me after the sentencing. "Not always in the way we want, but it arrives." But legal justice was only one part. Family justice was more complicated. Robert moved back to his apartment. He couldn't look me in the eyes for the first few weeks. Shame consumed him like acid. One afternoon in February, 2 months after the arrest, he knocked on my door. He brought a handwritten letter. "Mom," he said with a hoarse voice, "I do not know if one day I will be able to make up for what I did to you. I wrote this because spoken words are carried away by the wind, but written ones remain." The letter had 5 pages. In it, Robert detailed every moment Vanessa had manipulated him, every lie he had believed, every warning sign he had ignored. He acknowledged his cowardice, his willful blindness, his betrayal of the woman who gave him life. "I do not ask for forgiveness because I do not deserve it," the letter ended. I only ask for a chance to prove to you with time that I can go back to being the son you raised." I hugged him, because he was my son, because we all make mistakes, because a mother's love doesn't go out even if it hurts so much you wish it would. But I established conditions clear, firm, non-negotiable. "You go to therapy," I told him. "Individual and later, when I am ready, family. You are going to learn to recognize manipulation, to set limits, to not lose yourself in another person ever again." He accepted immediately. "And you do not inherit this house. Not yet." That surprised him. "Mom, I don't—" "Listen to me well, Robert. This house is my life. I almost lost it for trusting the wrong person. I am going to create a new will, one where Matt inherits directly when I am gone. You will receive the land at the lake and a part of my savings. But this house, this property that 4 generations built, goes to someone who showed having more courage at 13 years old than you at 42. I saw how he processed my words. I saw how they hurt him, but I also saw something else. Acceptance. "It is fair," he said finally. "Matt deserves that and more." All the documents I had signed under pressure were annulled. Morgan personally handled every procedure. The powers of attorney, the trust that fake, everything erased from the registry. I recovered total control of my assets. But more importantly, I recovered control of my life. Mr. Jacobs organized a neighborhood meeting where they thanked me for cleaning up the neighborhood. As if Vanessa had been a pest we finally exterminated. "Mrs. Miller," Mrs. Margaret told me, "You are an inspiration. My sister is going through something similar with her daughter-in-law. Could you speak with her?" And there something unexpected was born. With the $25,000 I had planned to donate, I created the Ernest Miller Legal Support Fund, named in honor of my late husband. A fund specifically designed to help elderly victims of family fraud. Morgan helped establish it. It wasn't a blind donation. It was a structured program that offered free legal advice, private investigators when necessary, and psychological support for the victims. "Many cases like yours are never reported," Morgan explained to me, "out of shame, out of fear, because victims think nobody is going to believe them. This fund can change that." The first case we helped was Mrs. Margaret's sister, a 71-year-old lady whose son-in-law was trying to strip her of her small grocery business. With our legal support, she won the case in 3 months. Then came a lady from Ohio, then a gentleman from Nevada. One after another, elderly adults who had been silenced, ignored, treated like nuisances by their own families. We gave them a voice, we gave them legal weapons, we gave them dignity. In 6 months, the fund had helped 16 families. 3 cases ended in arrests, 8 in family reconciliations after the abusers faced consequences, 5 in necessary but peaceful separations. A local journalist wanted to interview me. "The Grandmother Who Became a Defender," titled the article. I didn't consider myself a defender. I was just a woman who got tired of being trampled on and decided to do something about it. Matt became my shadow during those months. He accompanied me to the hearings when he could, to the fund meetings, to the consultations. "When I grow up," he told me one afternoon while we reviewed new cases, "I want to be a lawyer like Morgan to help people like you, Grandma." "People like me do not need help, my love," I told him, ruffling his hair. "They need to remember that they always had the power. They just forgot it for a moment." Robert complied with the therapy. He went religiously for 6 months before asking me to accompany him to a family session. The therapist was a wise woman of about 50 who didn't sugarcoat anything. "Susan," she told me after listening to our story, "what do you need from your son to be able to trust him again?" I thought carefully before answering. I need to see him defend someone more vulnerable than him. I need to see that he learned the lesson not only with me, but with the world. And Robert did it. He joined as a volunteer to the fund helping with free construction work for the victims, repairing houses damaged by abusive relatives, using his profession as an architect for something bigger than his ego. I didn't forgive quickly. I didn't forget. But slowly, month after month, I began to see the son I raised emerge from the ashes of the man I almost lost. Justice is not always a quick hammer blow. Sometimes it is the slow process of rebuilding what hate destroyed. June arrived with the trees blooming all over the city, painting the streets green and vibrant. It had been exactly a year since Vanessa Foster had entered my life. It had been 6 months since I had kicked her out of it forever. This morning I got up early as always, but no longer with that weight in my chest I carried for months. Now I breathed fully, deeply, freely. My house had gone back to being mine, completely. I recovered my sewing workshop. Robert himself helped move the furniture back. He painted the walls that soft yellow I always liked. He installed a new work lamp. I didn't ask for it. He did it because he wanted to, because he needed to repair with his hands what he had helped destroy with his blindness. The antiques Vanessa sold were mostly recovered. Morgan found the intermediary who bought them, and with the appropriate court orders, they returned home. My grandmother's tea set the silver candlesticks, even Frank's gold watch. My mother's ring with the swapped emeralds was the only thing we couldn't recover intact. The original stones had already been sold to a jeweler in Nevada who conveniently didn't keep records of that transaction. But I hired a trusted jeweler who replaced the fake emeralds with new ones. They weren't the originals, it's true. But when I look at it now, I no longer see betrayal. I see resilience. I see proof that broken things can be fixed even if the scars remain. Robert and I have dinner together every Sunday. Not at my house yet. On neutral ground, a restaurant he chooses where we split the bill because I insist on it. We talk about simple things, his work, the weather, the news. We don't force intimacy. We let it grow naturally like a plant that needs time after a frost. 2 weeks ago, he brought me flowers, yellow roses as always. "Mom," he told me while arranging them in the vase, "my therapist says I am ready to tell you something important." Tell me. I spent 6 months blaming myself for being so foolish, 6 months hating myself for having failed you. But I learned that self-rejection doesn't honor what you taught me either. He took a deep breath. "You taught me to get up after falling, and that is what I am doing. Not so you forgive me faster, but because it is what a son of yours must do." I cried, not from sadness, from relief, because finally I saw in his eyes something that had disappeared during the time with Vanessa. Clarity. Matt is my constant companion. That 13-year-old boy who had the courage to record a criminal is now 14 and has grown at least 2 inches. He comes after school 3 times a week. We do homework together at the dining table, that same table where I almost lost everything. "Grandma," he told me yesterday while we ate freshly baked oatmeal cookies. "In school, we are studying famous legal cases. I told them our story. The teacher said you are a heroine. I am not a heroine, my love. I am just a woman who refused to be a victim. That is exactly what makes someone a heroine." The Ernest Miller Legal Support Fund has grown more than I imagined. We no longer just help with legal resources. We created workshops on how to recognize financial manipulation, how to protect assets, how to set healthy boundaries with toxic relatives. Mr. Jacobs donated $1,000, Linda another $1,500. Small contributions that added up became large. In 6 months, the fund has $14,000 additional to my initial investment. We have helped 43 families, 43 people who no longer feel crazy, weak, or alone. A 72-year-old lady wrote me a letter last week. It said, "Thank you for showing me that it is never too late to roar." That phrase stayed with me. I have it stuck on my refrigerator. This afternoon, while preparing my famous apple pie, yes, in June because Matt asked for it, and I no longer wait for special occasions to do the things I love, the doorbell rang. For a second, just a second, my body tensed. That reflex of fear Vanessa left implanted in my nervous system. But I breathed deep and opened the door. It was the mailman with a package. Nothing more. Nothing scary. Just the normal life I had missed so much. Vanessa is still in prison. Sometimes I think of her. I wonder if she understands the damage she caused or if she only regrets having been caught. Probably the latter. I do not hate her. Hate requires energy I no longer want to waste. I simply erased her from my life like one erases a mistake, acknowledging it existed, learning from it, and moving on. This night, after Matt went home and Robert called to wish me good night, as he does now every day, I sat in my living room in that olive green velvet armchair that was my grandmother's. I looked around. The walls I almost lost, the furniture they almost snatched, the life they almost stole. But the key word in all those sentences is almost. Almost, but not quite. I took Frank's photograph from the shelf, the same one I looked at that night when I hit rock bottom and decided to stop being a victim. "I did it, my love," I whispered to him. "I protected what was ours. I protected our family. And although it hurt, although I almost broke, in the end we prevailed. And in that moment of stillness sitting in my recovered house, with the smell of freshly baked pie filling the air, I understood something profound. True wealth was never in the walls of this house or in the square footage of land. It was in the dignity I refused to surrender, in the self-love I decided to defend, in the strength I discovered when I believed I had none left. Because in the end, they can take your properties, they can steal your objects, they can try to snatch your sanity. But what they cannot take from you is who you decide to be when everything collapses. And I decided to be a lioness. Final reflection. If this story touched something inside you, if it made you think about your own family, about your own limits, about your own dormant strength, leave me a comment telling me where you are watching me from. Write your country, your city. Because stories like this know no borders. Family abuse, manipulation, the need to defend our dignity. They are universal struggles. Hit like if you believe it is never too late to defend yourself. Subscribe if you want to keep hearing stories of real people who found the courage to roar when the world expected them to stay silent. Because the most important lesson I learned in these 68 years is simple but powerful. It is never too late to remember who you are. You are never too old to fight for what belongs to you. And above all, never let anyone take away that which cannot be bought with money, your dignity. I am Susan Miller. I am 68 years old, and I still have a lot of roar to give.